Welcome to our global webinar series in honor of Prematurity Awareness Month, brought to you by the Preemie Parent Alliance and the Family Advocacy Network of the National Perinatal Association. Throughout the month of November, we'll be bringing you conversations with families and parents who have had a NICU experience in different parts of the world. We have wonderful conversations with families from Brazil, Australia, Ireland, the Gambia, Canada, and the United States. And throughout these interviews that we'll be sharing with you, we're going to be learning about what it's like to be a NICU parent in other parts of the world, what's similar and what's different. So today, we are focusing on Canada. Now, Canada has a prematurity rate that is just a little bit lower than that of the United States, with a rate of preterm birth at 7.8%. Now, unfortunately, this equates to where preterm birth accounts for 2/3 of all infant deaths in Canada. And the cause of 70% of the preterm births in Canada is largely unknown. Now, Canada and the United States are similar in terms of being a huge country. The Canadians do benefit from pretty good perinatal health care. But like you find in the United States, the way that care is delivered and the quality of that care that a high risk mother might receive or a baby in the NICU, it changes and it's different from region to region and province to province. I'm joined today by two wonderful women. First, Christy Love from the National Perinatal Association. And of course, our guest today is Fabiana Bacchini, who is a board member of the Canadian Premature Babies Foundation. She's also a journalist and a published author of a book called From Surviving to Thriving: A Mother's Journey Through Infertility, Loss, and Miracles. Fabi, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
So I'd like to start, can you share a bit about your experience? Now, I'm guessing from the title of your book that you had some struggles with infertility, and I believe you were pregnant with twins. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. I had my first son, term, actually he was a 42-weeker almost, through in vitro fertility process. We had tried for 3 years. We had several in vitros, and then we decided to go for a second pregnancy. And we ended up going to do another cycle of IVF. And then that time I got pregnant with twins. And I must confess that I was totally overwhelmed and wondering how I was going to raise 3 kids under the age of 3. Being an immigrant in Canada, I'm originally from Brazil. I have no extended family, but I ended up embracing the pregnancy right away. But we found out a few weeks later that one of the twins had a heart condition and he had 0 chance to make to birth.
I'm so sorry to hear that. That must have been devastating to find out.
Yeah, it was a very hard time for us. We decided not to share that with anybody because we didn't really know when it was going to happen, how it was going to happen. We were giving many different scenarios or what could happen to my pregnancy. So we wait basically 6 weeks in totally unknown mode, going to tests after tests until Michael passed away on his own at 25 weeks. And that ended up triggering my labor. They managed to stop my labor 25 weeks plus a few days. But at 26 weeks and 1 day, they couldn't do anything. And I was rushed into the OR. I had a C-section. And he was stillborn. And then Gabriel was born at 2 pounds. And he was rushed into the NICU, and I saw him probably 24 hours later, as far as I remember. And I didn't even have the chance to look at him right away.
Oh, wow. And so tell me about Gabriel's course, in the NICU. And I'm also just so sorry as a mom who's also lost a child. I'm so sorry for your loss of Michael. But tell us a little bit about Gabriel. What kind of diagnoses did he have? What sorts of things did you face with him? Because you were in the NICU for quite a while.
Yeah, so we were in the NICU for 146 days. Gabriel's very, very sick. He spent 7 weeks on a ventilator. And it was hard. It was hard because it was a time there was, we didn't know, like any NICU mom, we don't know what's going to happen hour by hour, day by day. And we totally have to stay in the moment, in the present, just waiting and just, but in that moment, I actually learned to stay present and celebrate the little boy that I had. And every day I celebrate that I had him one more day. Mm. But Gabriel was, he had ROP while we were in the ICU. So he had to have a procedure. We chose to have the Avast injections. When he was almost a term by the time we had the procedure. So we were really hoping that he was going to go home by then, but no, he decided to stay a little longer. He struggled with breathing all along. And we still brought him home on oxygen. So that was, not what I expected, because I really expected to bring him home and just carry on life as I knew life to be. But obviously, everything changed. But when we were in the ICU, I was very fortunate to be invited to participate in a pilot study, which was the family integrated care that Mount Sinai Hospital in Toronto was doing that, and we were invited to be part of it. And that for me was a life-changing experience. Obviously, I didn't know that when I was in the ICU, but reflecting back, I know the impact that had in my life, because we were invited to be in an ICU for 8 hours a day. We had a very strict what we could do, what we couldn't do. So the requirements was that we were there for minimum 8 hours a day, that we were going to be part of the team. So I was going to learn how to take care of Gabriel in the ICU. I was really going to be making decisions, the medical team. And the most important thing for me back then was to present my son at rounds, which is very different than being present at rounds and present him at rounds. And today I see that difference, because when I present him around, it made me find my voice. Not only for the time I was in the ICU, but more so when we left the ICU, that our life became, very overwhelming with appointments and specialists and therapists, that I could actually talk to them and understanding what was happening to my son and give them feedback on what her journey looked like in the NICU. So that was very empowering for me, and it helped me to become his advocate. And the other thing that was very important in ICU at that time was the fact that we had education classes 5 days a week. Mm-hmm. So we learned a lot about prematurity, different aspects of prematurity, the impact of prematurity in his life. We learned about developmental care. So I think I became a very active, proactive mom living in the ICU, because I had all that information, and they were delivered very slowly. It wasn't just dumped to us while in the ICU. It was very slowly, like a very slow pace, so that we could understand. It was actually translated into, our words, mom's words, rather than medical terminology that is so hard for us to understand. They actually translated that for us. We had a session on self-care or coping with an ICU. And that was, I think those elements of FICare were very important for me moving forward in life with Gabriel.
So, Fabi, you mentioned family integrated care, and in the U.S., we are familiar with that term, as well as family-centered care. But family integrated care is a bit different. Can you talk to us a little bit about the difference and how that helped prepare you to bring in Gabriel home?
Sure. To be honest with you, I didn't know one or the other when I was in the ICU. Was totally new to me. And I thought really that was a mode of care. It's just what we do to be there as a parent. So then I realized, no, it is different. And I think family integrated care go one step ahead of family-centered care. Because family-centered care, in my understanding, is we are present in the care of our child. But on integrated care, we are really integrating the care of the child as a participant, as a member of the team, to the point that we can actually help the healthcare providers on giving them information, and we are actually heard, and our input is taken into consideration. And that's what I see the main difference for me now that I'm in the community and I go to hospitals that practice family-centered care. And I see the difference between family integrated care, where I actually presented at rounds, and I was the crucial point of contact in that NICU environment for my son. Because we're in the NICU, we have different nurses every day. So they don't know our child, right? Okay, I saw him now, I read the chart, but we are there 10 hours, 12 hours a day, and we see what's happening to our kids, and our voice is important, and it has to be taken into consideration. And I think that is one thing of family integrated care that I took to community. It's been 5 years now. 6 years now that we are out of the NICU. And I see the impact that had in my life of being so present and so involved in his care, because Gabriel was diagnosed with cerebral palsy when he was 20 months old. So our journey never really ended. It just became a new journey with different doctors, different specialists.
So I was kind of curious on how often were you able to be at the hospital with him, and what was that like? Was your experience being at the hospital 8 to 12 hours per day typical for most families in the NICU?
No. One of the requirements was for the pilot study itself was to be there at 8 hours a day. But families, and I couldn't start with that because obviously I came into the NICU totally unprepared. I had a 3-year-old son at home. So in the beginning, I would just go for 2-3 hours until I recovered from the C-section. I became physically strong to be there and to organize childcare for my older son at home. And it is a challenge for many families, right? Especially here in Toronto, we have so many families like me, immigrants. We have no extended family. So it's hard to find childcare for your older child or the children you have at home. But I took that as a job, really. Instead of going to work, I was going to the hospital. And obviously, I was physically exhausted because I lived 45 minutes away from the hospital, and I had to commute to the hospital every day. It was tiring, but I saw the benefit of being there with Gabriel and trying to do as much skin-to-skin care as possible. And once he was off of the ventilator, it was much easier for me to hold him than it was when he was on ventilator. So I saw a purpose of me being there that many hours. And also because I was so involved in his care, there was a purpose for me to be there. So I thought I see as a very important aspect of his development and for me to understand what was happening to him because I was there. But I think obviously it varies from families to families. Families who live far away is more challenged to be at the hospital. And we all know the cost, the financial cost of being in the hospital as well. It's very hard for families to afford transportation, food. And I think that is something that hospitals have to consider. Families come from far away. And the hospitals have to have a physical space to allow families to rest, to warm up the food that they bring from home. So you have to, sometimes I visit hospitals, they have a very tiny kitchen. But all we need is we need a microwave. We need a comfortable chair to sit so we can be involved in the baby's care. And I think that was very important.
Mm-hmm. I want to ask you a couple of questions. First, At what point did they approach you about this study? Was that when you knew you were going to deliver, or after Gabriel had been delivered?
So back then, because I was in the study, we had the criteria, and I didn't fit the criteria right away because the babies back then could not be on ventilator. So now is a mode of care for Mount Sinai Hospital and quite a few hospitals across Canada. They are invited to be. I mean, it's the mode of care. So there's no, okay, you want to do this or you don't want to do this. This is how it is. This is how we do things. But when I was there, Gabriel had to come off of the ventilator. So I really joined family integrated care 7 weeks after Gabriel was admitted. But for families who had babies out of the ventilator, they were invited right away if they want to be part of the study. But now is the mode of care is how they do things, whether the baby is ventilated or not ventilated. So they encourage skin to skin. You see a picture of me now holding Gabriel on ventilator, but we all know how challenging that is, right? The picture looks amazing, but there was like 4 people around us making sure everything was okay. And that was the first time I held him on ventilator that I was holding my breath just in case something happened. But I think hospitals now, at least here in the big centers, they're becoming more comfortable bringing baby out on ventilator for skin to skin, which I find like pretty amazing because we all know the benefits of a kangaroo care. And it's a practice that has to be like a common practice, standard of care in every NICU around the world, because we know the benefits for the baby's brain, the baby's breathing, for us as mothers and fathers to reduce our stress. So, yeah, when I look at this picture, I feel very blessed that I had the chance to hold him during that challenging time.
And I also want to ask you, you said something really important a little bit ago where you said being present at rounds is different from presenting at rounds. So talk to us a little bit about that. And what was that like, when you first had to present your baby at rounds?
Well, I share that story very openly because, the medical team is very intimidating. We all know that. And coming from a different culture, like in Brazil, when we look at doctors, we look at them as gods and they are right and you don't question what they're saying to you. So that is my background. So obviously I came to my hospital with that mentality that I could not question. I could just say yes to whatever they were saying. And besides, I have no medical background. I don't know the terminology that I'm using. I don't know what CBC, TPN, ROP, and all this terminology. So I was okay, I don't know what to do. I don't know my role and my place here. But when I understood that my bedside nurse was going to be by my side. And in the beginning, she gave me a template. This is all you have to say. This is my son, Gabriel. He was born at 26+1. Today, he's, 33 weeks, and his weight is whatever. So that was the basic template from the beginning until I started feeling more comfortable to give more information. And the nurse was always by my side. And when we do training, we always talk to the medical team. It's very important that we have eye contact with the whole medical team. And you're looking at each other, and we are having that interaction. And do not use jargons that we don't understand, because you cannot be part of something that we don't understand. And I think that for me, like, I build on my knowledge. The nurses were, they coach you on how to do it until you feel comfortable enough to deliver that information and you really feel part of it. And for me, like, the most transforming thing was that multidisciplinary team was asking me questions about my son. And based on my observations, what do I think is happening? Until we made a decision, Gabriel is having reflux. I think we started to give him medication. It was a team decision, and I was part of it.
Yeah.
And I feel proud of me because obviously we come as moms so vulnerable in that environment. We feel so broken. Our dreams were taken away from us. But the moment we feel empowered to be a mom in that environment, that, you don't feel like a mom because everybody's taking care of your child, but you feel empowered and you feel, yes, I am this little guy's mom. And that is so important for us. And I see the difference because Gabriel had so many readmissions in the first year of his life. And we were in different hospitals. And, the team would come for rounds and I was not allowed to ask a question. Or I was not allowed to give my observation. And that was very frustrating because I had to come from a different experience.
Right. Oh, wow. As you're talking about this, I had a flashback when one of my girls, she was in the NICU for 5 months and had to get transferred from the birthing hospital NICU to the children's hospital NICU across the street to get a G-tube put in. And I remember sitting there, and the transport team was giving report on my daughter to the nurse, and they were getting everything wrong. And so I kept speaking up and saying, no, 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 that's not right. No, 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 that's not right. And I remember after that, exchange where the nurse then turned and looked at me and was asking me questions about her. And I thought, I do know my daughter. I know what's going on with her. And so it was just amazing when you were talking that whole scene just flashed in my memory, and it was very empowering and kind of a turning point. So I think that's wonderful that you were able to be a part of that study and just how transformative that was for your experience. Now, you said that is just the mode of care. So is that true no matter what NICU you're in Canada?
Well, fortunately, not yet. So once the trial was done at Sinai, they did a control trial intervention across Canada in 19 different NICUs. Many of them adopted some aspects of FICare, others didn't. It's challenging, and we all know how difficult it is to change healthcare. I think all over the world, I believe, is a change in philosophy of care. But I think it's inevitable that parents have to be involved in their baby's care. So I don't think it's not going back to where it was, where we were visitors in our NICUs. There's no such a thing anymore. It can't be that way anymore. And there is a lot of advocacy here in Canada, and I think FICare did take a lead on creating that philosophy and that mode of care. That it is in a lot of tertiary centers in Canada looking into it and adopting the philosophy. Many NICUs are going into single rooms, which support parents' presence and integration in the care of their babies, but we still have a lot of work to do. We've been trying on level 2 nurseries. I don't know if you already have the results of those studies, but obviously the philosophy has to be adapted to a level 2 reality, which is very different than a level 3. But I don't think we are going back to where we were before. I think we're moving forward, and there's a lot of peer-to-peer support inside hospitals, thanks to this mode of care, that veteran parents are in the hospital supporting other families, which is another aspect of integrating the families and offering that peer-to-peer that is so very important to all of us to cope and understand that we are not alone in the journey.
Absolutely. So you said that a lot of NICUs are moving to single room design. So is it pretty different from, again, in the United States, even in the same city, you can walk into one NICU and it's like one big, huge open bay with 50 isolates practically stacked on top of each other. And then you walk into another one and it's so quiet and everybody has their own room, and, it's night and day. So I imagine with Canada being as large as it is, that it's the same as well.
Yeah, it is the same. It is the same. So when I was in our hospital, we still had one open bay, 50 beds, one on top of the other. It was very loud and very, very noisy. But I had a lot of social interactions because it was an open concept. And for my personality, I did well because of it, because I like to talk to people. I didn't feel isolated. But now, Mount Sinai Hospital, Sunnybrook in Toronto are single rooms. Sunnybrook was the pioneer in the city. Sick Kids Hospital is still an open concept with a smaller, I think they have, I'm not sure, 6 babies on each bay. There are other NICUs across Canada who already moved into single rooms in Halifax and BC, but some NICUs are still open concept. Level 2s, some of them are open concept, or I guess not most, but some of them are open concept. The newer hospitals, single rooms, but I think a lot of hospitals are moving into that single room concept, which I find is we know there are benefits for the babies and for quietness and parents' privacy. But my concern about that is the social isolation of the parent. Because when I visit other hospitals, the rooms are beautiful, absolutely beautiful. I went to Halifax. It's a brand new unit that is, they even have a private bathroom inside the rooms, which is amazing. They have a high technology. They thought about everything for the hospital, which is amazing. And they have a good support there. But sometimes I just wonder about the parents' isolation. I think there has to be more work to bring the parents out of the rooms and socialize with other parents, which is a very important aspect of the NICU journey, I think.
So, Fabi, you just started answering a question that I had. Was what are the top 2 challenges that NICU families face in Canada? And then can you tell us a little bit about what you and your organization is doing to help these families?
I think from my understanding in Canada, I am new at this role with the Canadian Premature Babies Foundation, but I've traveled across Canada, and from my understanding, we have a ways to go to support families from the mental health point of view. I think that this is big for us here. We do need more support on that, not only in the NICU, but transitioning home. Families feel very isolated. We all know postpartum depression and PTSD is much higher in our population. We also know that we need to provide more education for families across Canada. So the Canadian Premature Babies Foundation is investing a lot in education. We truly believe that we need to support families that way. We need to provide we need to be a reliable source of information for those families. So that's our main goal now, is to do that. And we have a very large peer-to-peer support online, because we truly believe in connecting those families. So those families that are at home, they know they are not alone, or if they're in hospital, they know they're not alone. So we have a very good support group online, and we plan to expand that. And we do provide to those families also like webinars. We have a lot of plan for next year to do Facebook Live, so families can connect no matter where they are in the country. But we also have an issue of, because Canada is so big, there's a lot of families in remote areas, rural areas, where they don't have an ICU. They have to get transferred to big centers, and that can be an issue as well.
Right. I mean, what is the most important thing that you want families, parents to know?
I believe that families need to know that they have the right to be a parent in an ICU. and they can ask to be involved in their baby's care if they are not invited to do so. Because I really, we come into the NICU so vulnerable, and we have a hard time finding our voices and ask to be part of the care of our babies. So if you're not empowering those families, it's very hard. And families also need to know that they are not alone, because we don't talk about it enough, right? We go through losses, so we go through this massive trauma in our lives, and families we don't talk about it enough. And we think you're suffering alone, when actually there is a lot of community out there to support us. Now I'm connecting with you guys from US, we connected from families all over the world. So it's not my issue, it's our issue. And I think together we can totally make a difference in our lives, in the life of the families that we support. But we have to be more out there. And what you're doing is amazing, like raising awareness on the issue and knowing that, yes, we went through that trauma, but we don't have to live in that trauma, because there is help out there. We just need to reach out. And by the time we expect them to reach out, it might be too late. But why can't we be proactive and doing just what you're doing right now, putting these webinars together so families know, okay, this is not only me, it's all of us who experience that. And I think that is something so important when we talk about it. Somehow I feel that it normalized the situation. So we are not suffering alone in silence with either infertility or having the losses or having stillbirth or losing a child in the NICU or going through the NICU, because many of us who had extreme premature babies, we might have challenge throughout our lives. I have a big challenge because my child has cerebral palsy. Other families might have a learning disability because of prematurity. We don't even talk about this in school age anymore. So why not?
Right. I love what you just said about we've all experienced this trauma, but we don't have to live in the trauma. I think that's really very powerful. And I'm so glad that we are connected now. And I think you're right. We can make a huge difference by working together across the globe. Now, you mentioned that Gabriel has cerebral palsy. Can you give us an update on him? I love this picture of him, by the way.
I love this picture. I had to be honest, this picture lasts 2 seconds because he doesn't really sit down. But so he's 6 years old now. He just started grade 1 in September. He has quadriplegia cerebral palsy and dystonia. So to control his muscle tones, it's extremely difficult. I'm always trying to find what's happening in the world that can benefit my child. I do a lot of therapies, but he's a happy child. He's so happy and he brings us so much joy. And being a mother with a child with disability, I have to say that it's not an easy journey. But I also don't accept people saying sorry for me and sorry for my son, because despite of his diagnosis, we have a happy, fulfilled life, and he's not his diagnosis. He's a happy child. He loves to talk and he loves to read. He loves to do what any regular 6-year-old child does. Is just different. You just have to be more creative and flexible to still do what he likes to do. So that's what it is, and that's him in the summer.
That's wonderful. Okay. So as we close, I just want to, again, remind our audience of what you said, that parents are important in their baby's care, and you're not alone. Your involvement can make a huge difference in your own life, as you've heard from Fabi's journey, as how being involved in Gabriel's care throughout the NICU really empowered you to be the advocate that he's going to need for the rest of his life. And I love this picture too. How is that's your older son when Gabriel was an infant?
Yes, he was in the NICU. That was closer to discharge because Thomas was there with us every Sunday. It was our family day. And one day, towards the end, he said, "Can I hold my baby brother?" And I just couldn't say no. I got in trouble for that picture because back then they were not allowed to do that. But I say, you know what, we've been here for 5 months. I think I'm going to do that.
Right.
And, and Thomas has that picture in a picture frame in his room from until today. That's the first day he actually was, he touched his baby brother. And for me, it was a milestone, was the what regular families do. So why not?
And you can just see the joy in his face. That's wonderful. What a sweet moment. Well, Fabi, thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for all that you do. You are such an inspiration. I know that a lot of families who listen to this interview, this conversation that we've had, will find hope and will be empowered to be involved and to be those advocates. And we're with our organization, the Preemie Parent Alliance, and the Family Advocacy Network through the National Perinatal Association, I think we're going to have to change that line, that we're working together not just to improve family-centered care, but that we are working together to provide family-integrated care. And we have a lot that we can learn from your example in Canada. So thank you so much for everything that you do, that your coworkers do for families. Thank you to those who are listening. And just remember that throughout this month, we'll be bringing you all of these different conversations from around the world. You can visit our websites to learn more about each organization. Along with each webinar that's posted, we'll have contact information for our guests and the organizations that they're from. So thank you all so much, and have a wonderful Prematurity Awareness Month.